Most people spend their lives trying to control an experience that was never meant to be controlled, and the struggle quietly shapes nearly every form of anxiety, frustration, and dissatisfaction they experience. Because from the moment we learn to identify ourselves as separate individuals, we begin believing that life is something happening to us rather than something we are participating in, and this subtle misunderstanding creates a constant tension between what is and what we think should be. A tension that slowly exhausts the mind and convinces us that peace is something we must earn rather than something already present beneath the noise of thought. And this is where the wisdom inspired by Alan Watts becomes so relevant in the modern world. Because instead of offering techniques to fix the mind, it invites you to see that the mind does not need fixing. It needs understanding. And understanding begins the moment you notice that your thoughts are not reality. They are descriptions of reality. Symbols attempting to capture something far more fluid and alive than language can ever fully express. And when you confuse a symbol for the reality, suffering begins, because you start reacting to ideas rather than direct experience. And this confusion becomes especially apparent when you examine how much of your life is spent worrying about the future or replaying the past, both of which exist only as mental images. Yet they dominate your emotional state as if they were happening now. And the irony is that the present moment, which is the only place life actually unfolds, is often ignored, dismissed, or treated as a temporary obstacle on the way to some imagined future fulfillment. And this is why so many people feel restless even when they achieve what they once desired, because a habit of seeking has replaced the ability to experience, and the mind, conditioned to chase outcomes, never learns how to rest in what is. And this endless striving creates the illusion that happiness is always just one step away, when in reality it is buried beneath the constant attempt to improve the moment instead of inhabiting it. And the insight inspired by Alan Watts challenges this deeply ingrained habit by pointing out that the self you're trying to improve is itself a construct, a collection of memories, labels, roles, and expectations that you have learned to identify with over time. And while this sense of self is useful for navigating society, it becomes a source of suffering when you mistake it for your true nature, because you begin defending an image rather than living authentically, and you begin fearing change because change threatens the identity you are attached to. And yet change is not something life does occasionally. It is what life is, and resisting it is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter you grip, the faster it escapes. And this is why letting go is not about giving up or becoming passive. It is about recognizing that control is largely an illusion, and that peace emerges not from domination of life, but from cooperation with it. And this cooperation requires a shift in awareness, a willingness to observe thoughts without immediately obeying them, to feel emotions without labeling them as problems, and to allow uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. And this may sound simple, but it feels difficult because the ego thrives on certainty, control, and validation, and when those are threatened, it reacts with fear, resistance, and overthinking. And yet the ego is not an enemy. It is a function, a tool for interaction, but problems arise when it becomes the center of your identity. Because then every challenge feels personal, every change feels dangerous, and every moment becomes a test of worth. And this is why comparison is so exhausting. Because when you identify with an image of yourself, you are constantly measuring that image against others, creating endless insecurity. And this insecurity fuels a desire to become someone else rather than fully experience who you already are. And the paradox is that transformation does not come from rejecting yourself. It comes from seeing yourself clearly, without judgment, because awareness dissolves illusion the way light dissolves darkness, not by force, but by presence. And when you bring awareness to your thoughts, you begin to notice patterns, repetitive worries, habitual narratives, and conditioned reactions that no longer serve you. And this noticing creates space. And in that space, choice appears, and choice is freedom, not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from unconsciousness. And this freedom allows you to respond to life rather than react to it. And this is a heart of inner peace, not a permanent state of calm, but a flexible, grounded relationship with experience, where emotions are allowed to arise and pass without defining you, and where thoughts are seen as tools, rather than rulers. And the more you practice this awareness, the more you realize that many of the problems you believe were external are actually internal interpretations. And this does not mean external challenges disappear, but it means they no longer dominate your inner world. And this distinction is powerful, because suffering is not created by pain alone. It is created by resistance to pain. And when resistance falls away, pain becomes manageable, temporary, and meaningful rather than overwhelming. And this understanding is especially important in a culture that constantly encourages improvement, optimization, and productivity. Because while growth is valuable, obsession with self-improvement can become another form of resistance to the present, another way of saying this moment is not enough. And when that belief becomes habitual, peace is postponed indefinitely, and the wisdom inspired by Alan Watts invites a different orientation, one where growth arises naturally from awareness rather than force, and where change is welcomed as an expression of life rather than fear as a threat to identity. And this shift changes how you relate to work, relationships, success, and even failure, because failure no longer feels like a verdict on who you are, but feedback on what happened. And success no longer becomes something to cling to, but something to appreciate while it lasts. And this balanced relationship with experience creates resilience, because resilience is not toughness, it is flexibility, the ability to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing center. And this flexibility comes from recognizing that you're not separate from life. You are an expression of it, moving with it, changing with it, and participating in its unfolding. And when this realization settles in, even briefly, the urgency to control softens, the fear of uncertainty loosens its grip, and a quiet confidence emerges. Not the confidence of knowing everything, but the confidence of trusting the process. And this trust does not make you passive. It makes you present, and presence sharpens perception, deepens connection, and enhances creativity, because when you are not consumed by internal commentary, you become more responsive to what is actually happening. And this responsiveness allows you to act appropriately rather than compulsively. And this is perhaps the most practical gift of this philosophy, because it does not remove you from the world. It allows you to engage with it more skillfully, more compassionately.